Do you want to start the recording?
Give me 1 second. Stop the share because the control went away. There we go.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brendan Magnan, Chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission, and I'm calling to order the May 17th, 2023 Inland Wetlands Agency meeting, regular meeting. Lisa, please call the roll.
Ranjit Bahav, Daniel Bedecker,
Here.
Jim Connors,
Here.
Matthew Connors, Dave DeFlameri, Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Here.
Did we lose Lisa? There's Lisa.
There's Lisa.
sorry, I just lost it for a second. Lisa Tryon, Julie Valvo, Brenda Magnan.
Here, Julie's present. She was on mute.
And
And
Steve Munson is here.
Thompson is here.
Okay,
You may have said that while you got interrupted.
okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Julie's here.
No problem. Great, thanks everybody. We have a quorum. As a reminder, as we continue to host remote meetings, please ensure to use the raise your hand feature before speaking, and when when acknowledged by the chair, please state your name and address for the record. That's for the public. The commissioners do not need to do that. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act and Governor Lamont's executive orders, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the City of Milford website. At this time, I'd like to invite everybody to take their Zooms off mute and join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America
and
to the republic
for which
for which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for joining. If you could now place yourselves on mute. I'd like to move to the second item on the agenda, public comments, limited to topics not otherwise on the agenda. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to the board regarding any topics not otherwise on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to new business. Mary Rose, can you introduce, I'm sorry, could we have a motion to hear items IW 230028, IW 230029, and IW 230030 together?
Mr. Chair, through you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Connors. I'll second that.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Lisa, roll call vote.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Julie Valvo,
Aye.
And I'm with the motion. It carries unanimously. I'm with
Brenda
the,
Magnan.
I'm
Sorry.
with the motion. No problem. All right. So Mary Rose, do you want to give us an orientation for this one?
Sure, I'm going to share my screen because it's a little bit of a busy plan, and that'll give you a chance to start in and look at the site. Is that okay for everyone? Do you need it a little bigger?
Bob, we'll follow your lead, Mary Rose.
Bigger, I think.
Yeah, I can't really see it.
I don't know. Trying to get the screens arranged so you can see it. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. All right, this is item D1, IW 230030 subway. Item D2, IW 230029 subway. And item D3, IW 230028 325 subway. These are 3 applications for one project that spans the properties at 0305 and 325 subway. The proposed project is for construction of a 160,000 square foot warehouse. Sorry about that, I got the math wrong. Warehouse with its proposed parking, associated grading and construction and stormwater in and within 150 feet of a wetland in the Beaverbrook watershed. The plan proposed to fill in approximately 0.223 acres of wetland that is currently acting as a detention area, and to mitigate that with a wetland creation. The application, the site plans, the stormwater report are all in the document links on the plans and in the agenda. Tonight we have attorney Kevin Kersaden, Pat Rose of Rose Tizzo Company, and Bill Kenny of William Kenny Associates to present the application to us. Stop the share, Mr. Kersaden, if you, Mr. Chairman. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Rose, for the orientation. Turning it over to the applicants team.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Kevin Kersaden. I'm representing the applicant RD Cinto. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. With me this evening is William Kenny, our soil scientist, Pat Rose from Rose Tizzo, and also Manny Silva, the engineer from Rose Tizzo. Bill Kenny's going to give an overview of the existing wetlands conditions and also talk a little bit about some proposals. Manny Silva's here to answer questions that the commission may have about drainage. This is a little bit more orientation. If you're not familiar with it, this is the former Subway World Headquarters building, and one of their, ancillary front buildings that were more fronted on Subway, formerly Bick Drive. The intent is for an existing Milford company to relocate to this facility, a company that's doing very well nationally, I think internationally, and needs this additional space. And as you know, Subway has moved to Shelton and has downsized quite a bit over the years. So with that, I'm here to answer questions, but I just wanted to give a little bit more background to it, who the intended end user is of this site, and I'll turn it over to Bill Kenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Kersaden. Mr. Kenny?
Good evening. I'm Bill Kenny, the principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield. I'm a professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, and landscape architect. I'm coming to you today from my car because I have another meeting to go to after this. So hopefully you can hear me fine. And so what I'll do is review with you a little briefly the existing conditions as they relate to wetlands and watercourses, and then get into some of the proposed conditions. If it's okay to share my screen.
Let me see if that's turned on. Go ahead, try that, Bill.
Thanks. Whoops.
Yeah, we did see a white screen for a second.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that came up.
There we go.
Okay. Here's an aerial photo that actually Jeremy, I think is he with the open space in town?
Jeremy Grant, the open space
Yes.
and sustainability manager.
He helped us and provided this map for us, but this shows in the bottom left corner the Subway property with the parking lot, large parking lot, and then the office building in the back. And then if you notice, there's the Mondo Pond open space area to north of the site and east of the site, city school, southeast of the site, and I believe the ice rink in the southwest of the site, and Subway, the road, at the west end of the site. There are wetlands that, starting in the southeastern corner, that wrap around the property in the southeast, the east, and then along the north, and they encroach onto the property just a little bit in the southeast, and then more substantially in the northwest corner of the property. It's forested, and these are all primarily forested wetlands. Before this property was developed decades ago, this wetland system probably extended through the western portion of the property and onto the property's west of Subway Road. And that was disrupted with the past development activities. And something that a remnant from that activity is in the central western portion of this site, immediately east of Subway Road, is a depressional area surrounded by pavement. There's some trees in that area, and it's an old drained wetland area that now is used as a stormwater catchment area, but the wetland soils are still there. So that is, as defined in your regulations and the state statutes, that area does qualify as a wetland. However, it's lacking many of the functions of an undisturbed wetland. It's much drier than it was in the past. The water that used to make it wet is no longer there for the most part. So it's much drier than it was in the past. And because of that, it doesn't have as much of the wetland vegetation and wildlife that it would have had otherwise. And it's also surrounded by pavement. So that's an overview of the existing canal. One other thing I'd like to mention, the wetland in this area, which is just east of the word Engelhorn and Sons Movers, the wetland in here, there's a very nice upland area, forest, to the west of that exists on the property that is undeveloped. It's one of the few undeveloped portions of the property. And the proposed development includes eliminating this drained stormwater wetland that's in the southwestern portion of the property. And we are proposing a new wetland area. I'm going to stop sharing this image and share a different image. Proposing to replace this image. Just shows the northwestern corner of the property, that forested area that I mentioned earlier, that is a nice upland forest. And Subway, the road, it runs up and down on the left-hand side of the drawing here. And through the center of the drawing, running left to right, is an entrance drive into the property. And that existing wetland area is at the bottom. That drained wetland, stormwater wetland area is at the bottom of the property here. And when Manny describes the proposed improvements, he'll be able to explain to you more details about the parking and drives and building. But that area is proposed to be removed, and there is the ability to create a new wetland just north of the driveway to replace that. There's a relatively healthy wetland system right here, and we would create a new wetland right next to it and expand that existing wetland. However, to create that wetland, you need to essentially destroy the upland forest. And so we are offering this as some mitigation, but there is another option for mitigation. And we had a meeting with Mary Rose, Steve Johnson, and Jeremy to discuss that. And at your next meeting, we will have additional information regarding that. But the proposal is, rather than to just disturb this relatively nice upland forest, we would do work on the town open space property, particularly along the trail that circles the western pond of Mondo Ponds, the two ponds. And the western pond is the smaller area. You have the larger pond on the right and the smaller on the left. And there's a trail that circles that pond. We walked that trail with Mary Rose, Jeremy, and Steve. And Bob Cinto also joined us on that walk and identified some improvements that could be done along that walk. There's at least one spot where you could use a new footbridge, and there's many areas where we could remove some invasive vegetation along that walk, and other areas where we could put down some wood chips to make the path a safer path for passage. So before the public hearing, we'll provide you with some more detailed information about that so that you could compare that to the other mitigation measures proposed that would be on site. And we think that it makes more sense to preserve that upland forest that exists on the site and do some work on the town property and improve that pathway that would benefit many residents in town. So that is an overview of existing wetland conditions and proposed conditions. And Manny from Rose Tizo can give you more detailed description of the project development itself.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. Mr. Silva.
Good evening. My name is Manny Silva from Rose Tizo and Company. I'm a licensed civil engineer in the state of Connecticut. As you can, 35 Brentwood Avenue, Fairfield, Connecticut. As Mr. Kenny explained, the site is an existing commercial site with a small building here in the corner, and then a large headquarters building near Mondo Pond to the east. Our proposal is to have a 160,000 square foot warehouse building with some parking near Subway, and then another employee parking area in the back, and then one here in the north. As he explained, there is an existing retention pond that is flagged as a wetland here in this area that will be filling in. But in its place, we're going to put underground storage with an equivalent volume of what this retention pond held, because there is some stormwater that comes from across the street and then gets collected here. And then from there, it gets discharged into the wetland to the north. So what we're going to do is mimic that condition with an underground storage gallery system, which will allow water to cool and infiltrate into the ground and then into the water table, and then also allow it to be treated through the medium of the ground, the media of the ground, or the soil that's there today, and then and feed the wetlands to the north and Mondo Pond to the east. I'll just go over quickly. The stormwater design is again to have, hopefully I'll regen. There you go. Here's that field of underground galleries that's going to replace the retention pond. And then what we have is
Mr. Silva. Mr.
Yes.
Silva, if you
Yes.
could please, if you could indulge us and say that would be your proposed, as opposed
Correct.
to just assuming that it's going to be approved.
Oh no, did I
For the
say that?
record.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it is proposed to. Yeah, this is all proposal. Nothing's assumed.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just one more thing, Manny, when you're speaking to a sheet, since we can't see the sheet number, could you just tell us what sheet you're on?
Yeah, I'm on SP2,
Thank you.
which is the drainage and the utility plan.
Okay, thank you.
As you can see here, this is again the subsurface area that's proposed to replace the existing retention pond here in this area, and then to help spread out the groundwater discharge in the area. We have multiple underground storage facility or underground storage areas. One here, which is about 600 lineal feet, a 4x4 gallery, which is like a concrete tank that's underground that'll hold water. And then it has an open gravel bottom, which will help infiltrate and treat water into the groundwater table. All our prior to all our systems, we have a downstream defender or a swirl concentrator proposed, which will take out floatables and suspended solids in the water prior to entering the subsurface chambers. Again, we have another one right here near the north wetland. That one is also 600 lineal feet. And then that comes off of this trench drain, which will be draining the areas near the docks, the proposed docks. And then in the rear here, we have another drainage area, which will go to a more conventional, well, actually the galleries are conventional also, but an open retention pond area, so that the water in this area here, this south east quadrant, will be draining to this retention pond. She'll then allow water to infiltrate and then feed the Mondo Pond. And then it has a overflow, which is over land. And then that will go also to Mondo Pond, as similar to the hydrology of the site in it currently today. So we're trying to mimic the hydrology of how Mondo Pond gets fed and spreading it out throughout the site. But we are collecting it, storing it, and then infiltrating it. How the numbers work, we, as you can see here in our drainage report on page 5, we have a summary of our peak flows. And so to reduce floodwaters downstream per the regulations in Milford in the state of Connecticut, and for the 2-year storm, we've reduced the stormwater runoff from the existing condition by 31%, the 5-year storm by 37%, the 10-year storm has been reduced by 36%, the 25-year storm by 22%, the 50 by 12%, and then the 100-year storm has been reduced by 6%. Going back to the site plans here. And then during construction, we have to be conscious of protecting the wetlands and the surrounding areas while the site is being disturbed. So SP3 is our soil erosion control plan. And that basically has some reinforced silt fence right along the edge of the wetlands and our property line. And that is a silt fence with a hay bale behind it to help structurally hold up the silt fence so that it doesn't get blown over, or if there's a heavy amount of rain, it doesn't get pushed over, and that the silt fence stays in its place. Also, we have 2 anti-tracking pads, which are these large stone mats that when vehicles like dump trucks and things of that nature drive off into subway, the mud will get knocked off of the wheels and won't track into subway, and then can get any kind of silt or dirt in the town drainage system in subway. Also, when we have our drainage system in place, we have silt sacks on all our new catch basins prior to any kind of stabilization. And that's basically a sack of silt fence that goes into that catch basin, so that when muddy water that's from a site that's not stabilized yet goes into those catch basins, the mud and debris is collected in that sack. And then once the site is paved and vegetation is established, we take out those sacks, and the system will operate day one, clear and clean of any kind of contaminants or dirt, and it'll be ready to go and operate as designed. As Mr. Kenny said, one of the options is to have this area kind of depressed so that we can create a new wetland here in this area. If that option is what the commission prefers or not. That's just in this area here, just for reference. And then there is a landscaping plan, but right now an ornamental landscaping plan, but I think there's going to be some work done to this. So right now we have some shade trees along Subway on SP4, some low ground use here at the base of the building, some shade trees in the islands, all along some evergreen screening trees along the south property line here. And then there's a detailed planting plan on Mr. Kenny's mitigation plan. And that I'm sure we'll go into more detail with that in the meetings going forward. SP5 is our lighting plan to ensure that there's no light spillage into the wetlands or into neighboring properties. We have point-to-point analysis. So each point will show you how many foot candles will be illuminated in that area. As you can see, we're using LED dark sky compliant fixtures. Usually there's a section here, but I'll get to that. And so there will be no trespass of lighting over the property line or into wetlands. SP6 is our soil and erosion control details. Again, here's that silt sack detail where the debris gets caught in that silt sack during construction until things are stabilized. Then we remove these and the system will be free and clear. Here is that detail of that reinforced silt fence that we're going to use. It's basically a silt fence on this is the development side, and then there'll be a hay bale staked into the ground behind it to kind of hold it up structurally. SP7 is just some standard details on curbs and signs and things of that nature that are relevant to zoning. SP8 shows basically our plunge pool for our discharge into our overflows from the gallery system, which will be minimal, as we could see in the calculations. And then we are putting hooded outlets on all our catch basins, and that's to supplement our treatment train. So when water goes into the catch basins, any floatables, oils, bottles, things of that nature get caught into that, stay in that catch basin, does not go downstream. Then it goes into a vortex unit, which is a soil concentrator unit, which will further remove smaller suspended solids and any other floatables that might continue on. And then from there, it goes into either the gallery system or the open retention pond, where the water will then be infiltrated into the ground and further treated that way and recharge the groundwater. Again, there's some other details here just for construction. Here's the soil concentrator unit that we selected, water will come in, it'll swirl around here and slow it down, and then suspended solids will drop to the bottom, and then any floatables will get caught in the outside ring, and then water comes up and flows up from the center and out, and that water will be relatively clean, down to, I think it's something like 2 microns or thing. It'll remove that solids down to that size. And I think that's it for my presentation. I'm trying to keep it brief. If you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Any other remarks from the applicant team before we move on to questions?
Mr. Chairman, it's Kevin Kersaden. I don't think so. I know Mr. Kenny it may not be present for questions right now. I know he had another meeting to go to, but we can try to answer them if they're somewhat related.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we can, as this is the first presentation, we can ask any questions. We can discuss the merits of scheduling a site walk. We can request additional information. What is the agency like? What would the agency like to do?
I think a sidewalk would be in order.
Yeah, I believe so too. Mr. Munson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hold on, there we go. I'm not quite clear about something on the map. Just, I agree with Jim, by the way, that we should have a sidewalk. The map's too small, and I was not able to open them on my computer because something's wrong with it. I'm not quite clear where the wetlands lines are. Could you just take a pointer and show me where the whole thing is here?
Good question. And Mary Rose, I believe you can do that, or
I can try. Hold on. Let me just try.
Okay, go ahead,
This is
Manny.
Manny Silva again. Let me just try here.
thank you.
So the wetland line is, I'm going to mark it in red here. Hopefully you can see that. If not, let me know and I'll make it thicker.
No, I got
Um,
it.
Yep. So there's a wetland line here. And excuse I'm doing my best.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yep.
Okay,
It kind of follows this line here. As you can see,
Right.
it kind of goes around. I'm going to skip these little zigzags really quick.
Right,
And then
right.
I'm going to come around here and then it kind of leaves the page and then
Right.
it's
Right.
right here. And then there's another one, the other one that's the retention pond. Here, let me try to get that.
I mean, that,
And
right
there's
next-
an existing retention pond right here that was flagged as a
yeah,
wetland.
that I understand.
Right.
Got that. Okay. So everything inside of that line is wetlands?
In here is wetlands, and then everything here outside of it. So the wetlands goes away from here. So
Right,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I just
So,
want to be
yep.
clear about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You said inside, it's outside.
That's
Right.
outside, correct?
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
problem.
Mr. Chairman, for you, I have a question from Mary Rose. Mary Rose, when was this building originally built? Or this parking lot, what is now a parking lot originally built?
The building was built before I was here, so that's greater than 30 years old.
Okay,
There's a building, Manny, do you have the existing conditions survey?
Yeah, I can.
If
No,
you
I
don't,
don't. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll stop sharing.
Mary Rose, this is Kevin Kersaden. I believe that building was built in the late 80s.
okay,
Relatively new and, 91, 92 timeframe.
okay. Now, the parking that exists there. See, unfortunately, I don't have an existing conditions map in front of me, but
Trying to get it.
okay.
Go ahead with your question, Mr. Munson.
Well, the question is, was all that parking originally put in when the buildings were first built, or was it added in later, or, I mean,
Mr. Munson, this is Kevin Kersaden. I can answer that question. I have some benefit of historical knowledge, having worked for the legal department there in the early 90s.
good.
So
Okay.
to answer your question, I would say about 80 to 90% of that was paved in the early 90s. They did add some parking maybe about 10 years ago. That would be between the main headquarters building and then the building that was originally used for training for new franchisees that fronts on Subway. So there was probably an additional like 10 or 15% of the property was paved more recently, but the site had been pretty substantially developed right from the initial construction.
Okay, so what we are now basically looking at here is a warehouse is being placed in the middle of a parking lot. Basically, that's what we're doing, right?
That's
More or less.
that's fairly accurate. Correct.
I mean, it's not exact, but okay. Last question. What is the change in impervious surface? Approximately, to be exact, approximately the change in impervious surface on this plan from what exists.
So this is Manny Silva from Rose Tizo. It's just under 1.5 acres of change. So when you put the warehouse in and you get rid of all these landscape islands, I mean, we are going to add some landscape islands back, and then there is some area around the pond here that's being converted into parking lot. So the difference is an increase of just under 1.5 acres, which we've taken account for by storing it in those underground galleries and then the retention ponds.
Okay, and a lot of that 1.5 acres, if I understood what you said correctly, is in the middle of the existing parking area.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a lot of these long islands and things of that nature, and then there's some area between the buildings and the parking. So that's basically where most of it comes from.
Okay. I've got a couple other questions, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to yield the floor to anybody else that has any.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could clarify one thing. The parking area Mr. Kersaden spoke of, Attorney Kersaden spoke of, is right here in the lower left corner of your screen. And that was done several years ago. There was also expansions along the edge of these, probably about 25 years ago, closer to Mondo Pond. So the majority of this parking has been here, but the building and some of this building up front, some of this parking and some of these expansion of these parking aisles along Mondo Ponds to the I believe it's the northeast, have happened in the last 30 years. They weren't original.
Okay.
I have a question for the applicant. Just broadly, what kind of considerations have you given to the adjacent wetlands and the adjacent wetlands, given the nature of the business? You haven't mentioned anything about, the nature of the warehouse. Are there chemicals? What's the general nature of the business?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin Kersaden. I can't answer the question about chemicals right now. I'll be able to answer that question better when we meet again, but the general nature is the shipping of previously manufactured parts.
Okay.
So I don't believe that there's any storage of chemicals and other than what would be necessary to, for cleaning or, machine maintenance or lubrication along those lines, but I'll get you a better answer on that.
Thank you. And along that line, perhaps directed to Mr. Silva, on the proposed design of the warehouse and the parking areas that you've contemplated, two-part question. One is, are there fire apparatus roads that need to be contemplated to, for purposes of emergency fire equipment? Is that already factored into your plan? Or are you having to cope with that at all as part of the process? And how does that relate to the adjacent wetlands? And then the second part is, where is your snow shelf plan? So where are you intending to deposit snow when it snows?
Okay, Manny Silva again. Yes, the fire apparatus was taken into account. That's why we have these kind of swoopy curves going around the building. So our fire lane, if you want to call it, is basically from Subway coming around the building, and then going around here. And this is basically where the fire trucks can come in and out. We have the turning radiuses. We use turning templates for your largest equipment in Milford, and so that we can show that it can come around the building. Also, it's going to have to circumnavigate basically shipping trucks. So that's around the same kind of turning movement. As for the snow shelf, we have ample areas either here in the front, along this area here, and then here to store snow. But if we have, like we have in some other sites where when you have large snowstorms, like, 2 to 3 feet, which are irregular in Connecticut, but they happen, those things will have to be trucked off site by the property manager which in this case would be RD Cinto. And he has many properties throughout the state of Connecticut, and they do the same thing. When the snow shelf or your snow storage areas become full, or they need to be, that snow needs to be removed off site, they just load up some triaxles and move it to areas where they're designated to be big melting areas. They just pile it up in mountains and it melts over the summer.
Understood. Yeah, Mr. Silva, if you could just take an action, we would like to see the plans represent the designated shelves areas. And
Okay.
we'd like to make sure that we're comfortable with that, those proposed locations.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Is the original building gonna stay there, or is it gonna be removed?
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm sorry. It's going to be removed.
That's actually another question I had. Is there any way, Mr. Silva, you could show the proposed footprint of the warehouse as an overlay to the existing conditions?
Yes, I mean, it's kind of shown that way now, just because of the hatching on the building, can't, but I can try to outline it quickly again. Hold on. My Zoom thing gets in the way. So the building is actually here. It's this thing here. That's the existing building. It kind of goes, like I said, the hatch is in the way here, but it's kind of like this, I think. That's the one building. And then the other one is right here.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Connors, did you have another question?
No, that's it. That's
I'm sure there's other questions, Mr. Munson.
Yeah, I just wondering how tall is this building? 2, 3 stories? I assume it's a large open space, but 2 or 3 stories?
My understanding, sorry, go ahead.
This is Pat Rose from Rose T-Zone Company. The building will be a maximum of 45 feet high.
Okay, sloped roof?
It's one story. Yeah, it's a 1-story building.
Yeah,
So
but it's 1 story, but it's a warehouse, so it's big and
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
So, with a sloped roof?
with
or
a
flat roof?
with a relatively low slope roof that will slope from the loading dock side back to the south of the property.
Away from the ponds.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. I also have a couple of questions about the loading docks. Are there going to be vehicles left overnight, either at the loading docks or somewhere else on site? I'm thinking mostly of trucks. Or
I would assume the trailers would be there overnight.
well, I'm trying not to ask anything that would need you to identify, give proprietary information, which obviously we're not.
Right.
My concern is always, and I think we always think about this, is leakage from vehicles that sit overnight during the day, what kind of vehicles they are, oil, all that kind of thing.
They're gonna be
getting onto
tractor
the-
trailers.
Right.
Yeah,
So the
It's-
trailers that have nothing that's gonna leak. And the tractors, if they're leaking that, anything, the DOT would let them on the highway anyway.
Yeah, it will be tractor trailers, and we can find out specifically from the tenant whether there will be trailers left there overnight. That I don't know the answer to at the moment.
okay, just because that may require somebody to kind of look after making sure that there isn't, a lot of, gathering of pools of leaking oil or transmission fluid, that kind of thing that you don't notice but comes out sometimes.
Yeah, and you normally wouldn't leave the tractors because they always want to be moving to make money.
I would assume that. I just wanted to kind of make, because I know there's no parking facility there, obviously. So,
Right.
That was just kind of a, you know.
Any
So
other
Manny Silva, the civil engineer. So the area where the trailers park, will have this long trench drain here picking up the drainage from them. And then what we have after this trench drain is those oil water separator, or that water treatment structure.
Is that this long straight line in front of the?
Right, that's a trench drain in the area of the loading docks.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yep. I see.
And then that goes to a water treatment structure that's right here.
Okay.
And that will get all the oils and things get caught in here, and then that will be pumped out. The oil gets pumped out, gets inspected and pumped out every six to 12 months. And then that water, the clean water that's once it's been treated goes into this underground gallery system here. So there's no direct connection to the wetlands from any kind of drainage that comes off of the tractor trailers.
And that's why we've sloped from the wetlands back to the building for the
somebody thought of that.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Can the consulting team submit the stormwater management plan that's going to be part of this to ensure that the property owner is going to do that maintenance every 6 to 12 months?
Yes, we can do that. We can prepare a maintenance and operations manual for your approval.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just also add, the property owner, and if that obligation is passed on to a potential tenant, if that's what they do, that it also be specified in the lease. That's an option.
Any other questions?
Rose?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if the property owner may have an agreement with a tenant that they will see to that. Very often tenants are responsible for some maintenance. And if so, then that should be specified in a lease.
Mr. Munch, I think your point is well made. We can make sure that that's a condition,
right?
That flow down to the tenant. Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
No, it's not a question. It's just it's just making sure that all bases.
Yep, it's noted. Any other questions, Mr. Bedecker, Ms. Valvo, Ms. Gladison, Ms. Heather? Do we have any other questions or any other information we need from the applicant? This is a large application, so a lot to consider.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Munson.
Mr. Connors brought up the idea of a sidewalk. I agree. I think also typically what we do when we fill in wetlands is we have a public hearing. I think we always do that, I think. So.
Agreed.
Well, I'm sorry, last question. Mary Rose, have you heard anything from the general public on this?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no, we have not received any inquiries from the public about this application.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Crusaden, I would like for the next presentation a little bit more critical thinking from your wetland scientist, Mr. Kenny, around the alternatives that you've considered. And typically, to Mr. Munson's point, anytime a wetland is destroyed, there's a 4-to-1 ratio of a new wetland created. So we typically look for that And so while I appreciate the general idea of enhancing certain features in the public area, I'm not sure that that's sufficient mitigation for the destruction of the wetlands. So I don't have a premonition, but I'm not convinced that that's sufficient based on what I heard today.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin Christen. Yeah, understood. I understand your comments. We did assume that the agency would probably request or seek a public hearing due to public interest. And we'd request that perhaps that date be set tonight if possible, the first. And then secondly, there has been some critical thinking regarding the mitigation of the wetlands that are potentially would be, if approved, filled in. But we kind of shifted from critical thinking to creative thinking on that because and you'll see it on the site walk, but because of the state of the existing upland forest area, which is really not disturbed by invasive species and other things. That was one of the areas where we could create wetlands, but we would be destroying another, I think, a pristine condition upland forested area. So there was a little bit of creative thinking that went into seeing if there could be some enhancements made offsite on the city property in the Mondo Pond area. But we are aware of that. We'll still consider it and be prepared to more fully discuss it at a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're trained, we don't have a predetermination. So as I mentioned earlier, it's just we need to get comfortable with what alternatives you considered. What I believe Mr. Kenny said the functions and values were pretty low in the existing wetlands that are being proposed to be removed. But as an example, did you contemplate a lower footprint of a warehouse so that that area would not be disturbed at all?
Understood. And we'll have more questions or maybe be able to walk through the analysis in more detail at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you. Good, you could be prepared to do that. As it relates to sidewalk, do we have a motion to have a sidewalk? And actually, before we do that, do we want to pick a date so that we can factor that into the motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I had emailed with Mr. Kenny before the meeting. The agency wanted to make that date sooner so the applicant could have time to create all their documents. He seems to be available next Monday and Wednesday. Lisa is not available Monday to record the sidewalk. Does the agency have availability next Wednesday, which I believe is the 24th?
It is the 24th.
Okay.
4 p.m., something like that, maybe? Would that work for everyone? Is that too early? How's 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 24th? I see a thumbs up. Everyone else?
Nope,
Chairman,
I don't see a problem.
My schedule is kind of fluid and sort of unknown at this moment, so probably yes, but
Okay.
I can make it work.
yeah, I think.
Okay. So let's have a motion, Mr. Connors.
I'll make a motion that we have a site walk on May 24th at 4 o'clock.
The motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Heather. Any discussion on the motion? Great. Hearing none, Lisa, roll call vote, please.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Julie Valvo,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye, the motion carries. Mary Rose, can you kind of give us some guidance on when we would contemplate scheduling the public hearing? Would that be on the meeting of June 7th, possibly?
We could certainly do the public hearing on the June 7th meeting. The applicant needs 15 days to send out certified mailings to the adjoining property owners. As May is a 5 Wednesday month, that would work for him. The only question is, as their consultants will have everything we need, which is why I'd rather have a site walk sooner to give them time to get that together.
Mr. Crusaden, does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a motion to schedule a public hearing for June 7th at the next regularly scheduled meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thanks.
I'll
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mayor Rose, that gives us all the time to do the statutory notifications. You mentioned the adjoining neighborhoods, but we have to publish this in a paper and all that, right?
Right, we will need to publish that twice, so we will put it in the paper next, probably next Thursday, because those mailings would go out. With my dates. The mailing should go out by no sooner than the 23rd. So we could publish in the paper on the 25th, and then again on the 1st, which would give sufficient notice for a meeting on the 7th.
Perfect. Thank you for confirming. Any other discussion and motion? Hearing none. Lisa, please call the roll.
Daniel Bedecker,
Roll call vote.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Julie Valvo,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Mayor Rose, anything else we need to discuss with the applicant team before we move on?
No, I think I just want to make sure the applicants are clear that from my notes, the agency is looking for fleshed out stormwater or wetland mitigation plan, a snow shelf plan. Is there any clarification the agency needs? Would the agency members, at least for the site walk, like 1 or 2 sheets of a 11x17 plan so that they could have the plans to see in the field?
Yes, please. And then the other analysis we need is the alternatives considered.
The alternatives considered are necessary by the public hearing and the stormwater management plan post-development, so that we've got that on file. This has been sent to the city engineer for his review. I believe Mr. Rose and Mr. Silva have already been in contact with the city engineer to make sure that they're getting on the same page to ensure that it will not just fit the qualifications for a wetland permit, but also for a zoning permit.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Rose. Anything further?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Munson.
might suggest that the applicant have the corners of the building staked when we have the sidewalk.
It might have to be marked with spray paint.
I was
It's
gonna say probably
blacktop,
won't
but yeah.
In some, okay, that's fine. I mean, mark some way.
Great. I think that's all we have for you, Mr. Crusaden and team. We're going to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for coming before us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Let's turn our attention to the agenda. I believe we have the minutes from the last meeting.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there.
I will abstain also.
Okay, Miss
Mr.
Heather.
Chairman,
Yes.
through you, can I move to make a motion to accept the minutes from the May 3rd, 2023 regular meeting as presented? That is my motion.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Julie. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, Lisa. Roll call vote.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Abstain.
Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Abstain.
Julie Valvo,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Thank you. The motion carries. Would you mind putting the agenda back up? I believe staff report is next.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Go for it. Mary
Hold
Rose.
on a second. I'm trying to find the agenda. Hold on a
It's
second.
next.
I know it's next. Nope. Wrong share. My apologies. So the, no real change. We've got the, my apologies again, hit the wrong button. Trying to find the, sure. The, there's no real change in the, sites. I was away for a few days, so we've had a few applications taken out. I'll start doing those erosion controls inspection late this week or early next week. Most of the sites are ongoing. 1553 Boston Post Road is rapidly finishing up. The 40 Morehouse and 32 Alexander that we did at the last meeting have taken their permits out, so they're going to be starting soon once they get through zoning and building. And 523 Wheelers Farms Road is ongoing. They're moving along. No other real big changes other than we've been working on this. We've got some hazard mitigation meetings next week to look at some things the state's doing. And we've had a number of complaints come in the office that we'll be investigating late this week and early next week. Does anyone have any questions?
No,
Is everybody familiar with the location of the sidewalk? There's plenty of parking on the site.
Won't be a crowded, tiny street.
No, it will not.
Great. Thanks, Mary Rose. Moving on to the chair's report, just please be mindful of mark your calendars if you haven't already to join us at 4 p.m. next Wednesday, 24th. So we don't forget, these don't happen very often. And thanks everybody for your deliberation and participation this evening. As always, we appreciate your time. Do I have a motion? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
yes, you
Mr. Chair,
do.
through you, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Great. Lisa, roll call vote.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Heather Donaldson Gladue,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Julie Valvo,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks for coming,
Bye.
Scott.